for a new microphone to be delivered, and it's finally being delivered. And what I realised was that my old mic wasn't actually broken, but like my USB to lightning adapter was. So I had to wait even longer. So now I've got two mics, but I ordered a Blue Yeti because I wanted the quality of my videos to be a lot higher. So consider this video the start of like a new era on this channel. I really want to focus on like being more consistent and with like my uploading and bringing videos that are definitely more relaxing and cozy. I also don't know why I've never used the cinematic setting on my phone, so welcome back to my channel. Thank you for sticking around and being patient with me. Today I am going to do my January reading wrap up. So yeah, I thought a book video would be a good way to start this like revamp, because most of you are probably here for the book content. So let's get started. So in January I read 10 books, and which is like, I didn't expect to read that many in January, but it's because I actually listened to 5 audiobooks this month, last month. So I read 5 physical books and I listened to 5 audiobooks, which I never do. Like I literally listen usually to like 1 or 2 audiobooks a month, but every time that I was at work it was really quiet, so I would like listen to an audiobook whilst I was at work every single time, and I managed to listen to 5 audiobooks in January. What we will do, I will start with the physical books, and then we will go on to the audiobooks. So my first book of 2024 was My Dark Romeo by Parker S. Huntington and L.J. Shen. I've read the Sinners of Sane, is that what it's called, series by L.J. Shen. I listened to that on Audible, and to be honest, I saw this book and I just thought, I like the cover. Is it gonna focus? I love the cover of this book. And this is like your typical kind of asshole guy redemption story. To be honest, both characters in this will start off as like rich assholes. But this was a wild ride. It is kind of like a forced marriage, forced relationship. I wouldn't say it was like an arranged relationship or an arranged marriage, but it kind of goes down that road. some Romeos deserve to die. It was supposed to be a harmless kiss at a lavish debauchee ball. A clandestine moment with a handsome stranger. But unlike his namesake, my Romeo isn't driven by love. He's fueled by revenge. To him, I'm a chess piece, leverage, his rival's betrothed. To me, he's a man deserving of poison, a dark prince I refuse to marry. He thinks I'll accept my fate, while I plan to rewrite it. And in my story, Juliet doesn't die, but Romeo, he perishes. This book, I don't even know where to start with this book. Like, what happened? I ended up giving this a 3-star, like, for its sheer audacity in some parts. Like, honestly, there was parts in it, such as him describing the amount of cum he has to being able to fill a venti cup, if that was possible. I would ring my boyfriend at some parts during this book, and I would be like, listen to this sentence, and I would be like laughing. The thing is, it wasn't meant to be funny. Realistically, this is probably like a 2-star book, but I couldn't put it down just because of how just flabbergasted I was at some of the things that happened. Honestly, sometimes I'm like, where the fuck do authors, how do they come up with some of these things? It was definitely a fun read, but I think that's why I gave it 3 stars, because it was fun, and it was just I was just left kind of sitting in silence at the end of it, what the fuck have I just read? I will say, I did find the main character Romeo, the main guy, I did find how he was written attractive, and that's probably because I've got terrible taste. Well, I used to have terrible taste in men. But if you're into kind of the toxic billionaire, then he'll definitely be for you. Also, the girl in it, she's called Dallas, and she's just hilarious. She's just hilarious. She's one of those girls who's rich girls who's been brought up with money and doesn't have a clue about real life, and she was just funny. I know. At one part in this book, Romeo described his dick as being 8 inches long with a 6-inch girth. Is it a vase? What? That's not even humanly possible. What? They also, at one point, were having sex through their clothes, actual penetration through their clothes. And I felt like I was in pain, physical pain, imagining that. So, don't pick this book up for amazing literature. Pick it up to just have a conversation with me about it, because honestly, you'll never have read something like it. It's so bad that it's okay. So yeah, my Dark Romeo. Also, what I will say, I've changed my rating system. I only rate things 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 now. I just think it's a little bit easier. 1 is awful, 2 is nothing special, 3 is enjoyed, 4 is very good, and 5 is obsessed and perfect. So yeah. Then the next physical book I picked up was a whopper of a book, and I read book that I'm showing you, please. Anyway, this is dual point of view, and it follows Shannon and Johnny, and it's set in a high school in Ireland, which I had no idea about. I didn't know it was had an Irish setting. Shannon comes from an abusive house where she is severely abused by her dad, and she's also bullied at her school to the point where she has to move schools, and she moves to a private school, and she meets Johnny, who is the rugby star at the school. He's also an up and coming rugby star for the Irish national team. And it's basically about their relationship and also their lives, I guess, and how they navigate that. I gave this 4 stars. I really did enjoy it. It is I would look at the trigger warnings, but what I would say is people on when I was reading reviews and stuff, I thought something genuinely I thought someone was gonna die, which I don't really think is a spoiler, but it is the topics that are discussed and spoken about are difficult, but it's not as heartbreaking as I think it is kind of made out to be, if that makes sense. I do think Chloe Walsh dealt with the situations and the topics really well though, and it did make me well up and cry. But again, I don't think I've ever read a romance this big, 800 pages, and this is only the first. This is only the first in Johnny and Shannon's story. This is the Boys of the Men series. So yeah, 4 stars out of 5. I did really enjoy it. I got through it pretty quickly for an 800 page book, and I didn't get bored or anything. One thing I will say is that the chapters are ridiculously long. No chapter needs to be 30 to 40 pages. So shorten the chapters, please. I then went straight on to reading Keeping 13, which is the second and the final book in Johnny and Shannon's story. Again, another 800 page book, and this literally just follows on from the first book. There's no jumping timelines or anything. Obviously I can't really say much about this book without ruining the first book, but again, I really did enjoy this book. I gave it 4 stars again. This one was a little bit slower. I do think it could have been a lot shorter. I do think that some parts were quite repetitive, which got quite frustrating. The same situation kept happening again and again, which I don't think was necessary. But again, I did enjoy it, and I'm happy with how it ended. I am definitely going to be continuing the series. I know that the next 2 books, Saving 6 and Redeeming 6, follows 2 other characters that we meet in these books. Definitely going to read those. There's a new one coming out in April, Taming 7, which follows another set of characters. So I want to read Saving 6 and Redeeming 6 before the new release, so then when that is released I can go straight on to reading that. But yeah, I do get the hype about these books. I did really enjoy them. 4 out of 5 stars for both of them. this is the second and the final instalment in the Letters of Enchantment, like duology by Rebecca Ross. The first book was Divine Rivals. Really like popular books, like everyone seems to be obsessed with these. I read Divine Rivals last year. I actually got the book in like my first ever Fairy Loot box, and I read it, and then I sold it for some reason, and then I just picked up like the original UK hardback, which is on my shelf over there somewhere. So this is the second in the series. I wanted to find out what happened to the characters. This series follows Roman and Iris, and it is marketed as like an enemies to lovers, but I think it's marketed wrong. They work for like a newspaper agency, and they were like competing for one of the top jobs, so they were like rivals, but then they become lovers. It's set in a world where there is a war between gods going on, and there's like an element of magic involved as well. Okay, I don't really get the hype about these books, to be honest. I did give Divine Rivals a 4-star, but like looking back, I don't think it is a 4-star, and I gave Ruthless Vows a 3-star. So like I did enjoy them, but I don't really get the hype. Like the location and like the world setting, I think is jarring because it gives kind of like British World War II cottagecore vibes, but then there's like modern aspects to it. It's got gods, but they're like in the image of humans, and like a random magic. Like I don't think it's like cohesive. I just find it a little bit like there's so many ideas, but they don't mesh well together, and they're not like fleshed out enough. And that's how I felt about this book as well. So 3 stars. It's like I enjoyed it, but it's just like average. It's very mid. It's a mid-series, I think. So I don't understand how people are giving them 5 stars. Like genuinely. But I got through it quite quickly. Like it was a fine read. But I am glad that it was only a duology. Like I'm glad there wasn't another book, a trilogy. Like I'm glad it wasn't a trilogy. So yeah. I then picked up, so I finished Ruthless Vows, and I was waiting for the release of House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J Maas, and I was like, do I just not read for a couple of days, or do I like try and finish a book before it's released? So I basically just chose the shortest book on my shelves, and that happened to be Normal People by Sally Rooney. I've had this on my shelf for like probably nearly a year. It's under 300 pages, and I think originally I had seen like Hayley Jean review it, so when I saw this in a charity shop for like £1 last year sometime, I was like, I'm going to pick it up and I'll just read it at some point, but I never felt kind of like drawn to it. So I am glad that it was the shortest book on my shelf, because I really did enjoy this book. I gave it 4 stars, which I was very pleasantly surprised about. Connell? I always said Connell in my head. And Marianne grew up in the same small town in the west of Ireland, but the similarities end there. In school, Connell is popular love. It takes us from that first conversation to the years beyond, in the company of two people who try to stay apart, but find they can't. So like, this literally just follows Connell and Marianne over like a few years of their life, from like school, high school to university. Like, that is literally what it does, and it is like so matter of fact. Like, it literally just says like what they do, but it's so good. Like, I don't understand why it's so good. It just is. Like, the kind of like commentary throughout as well is like thought-provoking, and it's just like depressingly realistic and relatable. Sally Rooney doesn't use quotation marks, which at first I kind of struggled with, but like after a while I just got used to it. In the first like few pages I thought I was gonna like hate this book and like its style of writing, but I ended up really enjoying it. This is one that I would definitely like recommend reading. It's so different to the books that I like tend to pick up, but I am so glad, like, it just proves that like if you kind of go out of your comfort zone with reading, there is still books that you will enjoy. So I'm like definitely intrigued to pick up more Sally Rooney novels. This is a book that I would actually like definitely reread, and I'm not a massive like rereader, to be honest, but I would reread that book, and it's so short that there is no excuse not to read it because it is really good. Okay, so on to audiobooks. I'm going to do some tapping on my Kindle whilst I talk about the audiobooks. So the first audiobook I listened to this month was King of Pride by Anna Wang, which is the second in the King of Sin series. I listened to King of Wrath in November and I loved it, like really enjoyed the audiobook. This book, King of Pride, follows Kaya Young and Isabella, can't remember her last name, which are like two people we're introduced to in the first book in the series. Kai is like one of the top dogs in this firm. I think it's his family's firm, and Isabella works in like the elite bar that they all go to, like the Valhalla Club. There's a big CEO, like CEO, not meeting. They're choosing a new CEO for the company that Kai works for, so he can really like try to get distracted by romance, however he does. So it's about him and Isabella's developing a relationship. I gave this 2 stars. Like, so different to what I gave King of Wrath, and I think it's because the British narration for this. So Kai is British, he's meant to be British, but the narration, oh my god, it was so bad. Oh my god, it was so bad. Who thought that was okay? Like, I'm British, and that British accent was the worst British accent. I mean, the guy might have been British, but what? It was just so horrific. Like, it was meant to be clearly like upper class Britain, but just the way that he said some words, like instead of saying like details, he would be like details. No one speaks like that. Like, no one speaks like that. So that was so off-putting. I could not get past the narration. Like, every time that guy spoke, I couldn't. It was so off-putting, so I couldn't find anything remotely even attractive about Kai. And to be honest, like, the story was just pretty dull. There was nothing like special about it at all. So that was pretty disappointing. It wasn't like horrendous. I probably would have enjoyed like the physical copy more, but the narration, it was a killer for me. It was a killer. So honestly, I don't know who like okayed the voice for that. That person needs sacking. I also listened to the third book in the King of Sins series, which is King of Greed. This is kind of like a second chance romance, and it follows Dominic and Alessandro, who are already married, but their relationship is like not in a good place. Dominic is always focused on work and gives Alessandro absolutely no attention whatsoever, misses like birthdays and anniversaries, and she basically has like just had enough and leaves the relationship. The marriage, leaves the marriage, and it follows their like exploration of single life, and also Dominic trying to win his wife back. I gave this audiobook 3 stars. 3 stars. It was definitely better than King of Pride. Like, the narration was a lot better. I also liked how it explored kind of their rekindling of their romance, or the attempted rekindling of their romance, rather than like their initial meeting. But again, like, it was nothing special, but it was like fun, and I enjoyed listening to it. I liked Dominic's character development. Some things seemed a little bit too like easy, but again, like, it was just a fun listen to whilst I was working. So yeah, I would recommend like the series. I think it's fun, but there's like such a difference between books. Like, it's not like a consistently good series. But if you like to read about rich people and their relationships, it's like okay, that far. I then decided I was like looking, because I had no credits left on Audible, so I was looking at like all the free listens, and I saw that the Never After series by Emily McIntyre was on Audible, or whatever it's called, like the free ones, and I was like, oh, I never knew this, because I read Hooked last year on my Kindle, and I loved it. I loved Hooked, like really, really loved it, and I knew that I wanted to carry on that series, but like for some reason I just never got around to like picking them up. So when I saw that they were free, I was like, I'll just listen to them. So I started listening to Wretched, which is the second in the series, and this is like inspired by The Wizard of Oz. So these aren't like fantasies, they're like contemporary romances. I guess they're like contemporary darkish romances with like elements of popular fairy tales or popular like stories. So Hooked was obviously like based around Peter Pan, or had elements of Peter Pan. They're not retellings though. And Wretched was Wizard of Oz inspired, and it followed Evelina and Nicholas. And in this particular audiobook, Evelina is like the villain. These are meant to be kind of like where the villain gets the happy ending. I gave this 2 stars, which was a bit disappointing, but like basically Evelina is part of this kind of like drug cartel family, and Nicholas is a like police guy, a cop, and he goes undercover to try and bring them down, but obviously they end up liking each other a lot. What I would say, this had like such good follows Yasmin and, is it Julian? Or Julian, who's, I think, is meant to basically be like Jafar. And Yasmin is the daughter of a very wealthy jeweller and businessman, and Jafar is his kind of like right hand man, I guess. There's an age gap, and also it's kind of like, again, like a forced marriage, not an arranged marriage, more a forced marriage. I gave this 2 stars again. I'm kind of just bored of the same plot with different characters, and I'm also bored of like every villain having like a really bad, like a really like big sob story behind the reasons that they're an arsehole. Like, it's all the same, there's nothing new about it. I also think that there was like the elements of Aladdin, such as the lamp, how it was incorporated into the story was kind of just so random, that I didn't really enjoy that much. What I will say is that Emily McIntyre, I do enjoy her spice. Her books are spicy, and they are like fun spice, good spice. So if you love a villain and if you love like a bit of spice, this series is probably for you. Again, like, not a bad book, but just nothing special. I would still recommend them. Maybe read the physical books instead though, because like I gave Hooked 5 stars, like reading the physical copy. So maybe it's just me not enjoying like the audiobook as much. Finally, I listened to Scarred, which is the second in the Never After series. I originally had put it on after Twisted, and I was like, another British narration, which is horrendous, and I turned it off. But then like after Twisted, I had nothing else to listen to, so I was like, I'm just gonna have to deal with it. So this has elements of The Lion King. What I will say is, again, British narration, it was just bad. I understand it was meant to be like Queen's English, but all I could like imagine was The Crown and also Mr. Bean. I don't know why. So that was initially kind of a struggle, but I eventually did actually manage to get past like the narration being annoying. And I actually gave this one 3 stars. I enjoyed it more than Twisted and Wretched, which I didn't expect. This follows Tristan, who is royalty. His brother Michael is the king, so he's like second in line, and he basically wants to overthrow his brother. It also follows Sarah, who is from a place who also wants to like overthrow royalty, but she's kind of like not undercover, but she is she's been arranged to marry Michael, who is the king, but she's like a mole, if that makes sense. But she meets Tristan and they end up having a bit of a spark, and it kind of revolves around their relationship and also their like plan to overthrow Michael from the throne. This is definitely like has more like a fantasy-esque, definitely more like a fantasy-esque location. It's also kind of more like a historical romance. It feels like that, which I really enjoyed. I really did enjoy that. It gave it more of like a whimsical feeling rather than just like your modern like contemporary romance. So I think that was done well. I enjoyed those elements of it. A lot better than Twisted and Wretched. Not like amazing, but definitely good, definitely worth a listen and definitely worth like a read. I also really liked the ending. Like the ending, I was just like, like, thank you Emily McIntyre for that ending. So yes, they are the 10 books that I read in January. Currently I am reading A House of Flame and Shadow, so expect that to be reviewed in my February wrap up. Thank you for watching this video. Comment below which books you read in January. I'm always looking for like recommendations. I hope that the quality, like the audio quality, is